I'm Jonathan Myrona, and I'm here to talk about a controversial problem that has faced us from the beginnings of our democracy and well into the present day. This is not a single succinct issue that can be resolved quickly by a bill in Congress. The issue lies deeply in the core structure of our government and even arguably in human nature itself. The problem is with the politicians themselves. Do the politicians who lead our nation today make decisions without an impure influence misguiding them? Are bureaucrats really representing common civilians once up in Washington? Let's take a look at the beginnings of our type of government, democracy.
Democracy began in ancient Greece around the 5th century BC. They didn't like being ruled by tyrants or kings, and so in order to do that, they established a system which allowed citizens to be involved in the political process.
The Greeks provided a foundation, in my understanding, for civilization in general, or at least Western civilization, that is based not only on the ideal of democracy, but also reason and empiricism, which is, like the scientific method, and how do you justify your beliefs? And I think it's important to be able to distinguish between believing what we want to believe or what we're compelled to believe because we have an interest in believing a certain way, and believing what we're justified in believing.
The Greeks were not represented, but rather had a direct democracy. They supposedly justified their beliefs and had an open debate. So what's the difference with our government?
Athenian democracy was a direct democracy, which meant that all citizens participated. Today we have evolved into more of a representative democracy where we vote on people to represent our views. It is a democracy in the fact that all the citizens of the country vote for their leaders, and occasionally, in cases of referendum or initiatives, vote directly on issues. But in ancient Athens, it was much different than ours in that it was limited to who could be a citizen. Women were never citizens. Slaves, of course, could not be citizens, nor could most foreigners unless they had established residence in Athens.
Well then, to be fair, the Greeks don't have an ideal system either. Turns out only the elite were given suffrage. But don't our politicians have to be elites in a way? Can the common citizen chair a notable position in government?
And if a school teacher decided to run for Congress, she should have the same $300,000 that the guy running for Congress has that was raised to be a politician. It should be a duty that somebody in the community feels like they belong in and have the same amount of money to compete with the other politicians that have the millions of dollars.
Can we question the integrity of the officials and the promises they make? I mean, are they looking for the best interest of the people, or is it really perpetuating a system that caters to the elite? The government run by the wealthy, those who have the power and the money to actually finance a campaign in order to make it to office.
Money has to get out of politics. Now, the unfortunate part is you're up against a Supreme Court ruling that equates campaign contributions to free speech. But if we were to move to a system of public financing, whereas all candidates facing each other would get the same amount from the tax dollars, then they wouldn't have to raise money, and you wouldn't have candidates chasing after money to outraise their opponent. It would be a level playing field, or at least a more level playing field.
So it looks like our system, too, has a tendency to give favor to politicians that have a leg up financially, rather than giving everyone an equal chance. Are the elites legislating for their own benefit? In that case, what would an ideal government system be like?
At this point, the best form of government is anarchy. In this sense, citizens can live governing themselves in peace without 500 men that we don't know dictating to us what the laws are going to be.
What we have now isn't perfect, but it works. The founders came up with this system. It's been tweaked a little bit over the past couple hundred years, and it seems to work as well as it can. Now, obviously, there are times when it doesn't work, such as the lack of oversight of the banking industry recently, but then you have an opportunity to overhaul the banking industry and try and make it better. It's not a perfect system, but it seems to work.
In an ideal world filled with people who care about each other and who have an interest in, working together to make society work for the benefit of everyone, the libertarianism would be a good way to do things. People would naturally take care of each other, and you wouldn't need government to come in to solve problems.
Perhaps we would benefit from some change in core government. President Obama, you as a president-elect preached change, and that's what the people wanted. How possible is the kind of monumental reform that might be necessary for an overall improvement in representation?
We're going to continue to make poor decisions. We're going to continue to believe the information that our superiors pass down to us. We're going to continue to compromise reasons for vested interests. Those are some of the many obstacles that I would say face substantive change in the Obama administration and future administrations.
I think government reform is really hard to carry out when Congress makes the rules that govern Congress. They're the ones who oversee Congress, which makes life a lot harder for outside groups, such as public interest research groups, who say, well, you need to reform, you need to have an outside ethics committee, you need to do X, you need to do Y. Congress is pretty satisfied with what they have, even though you run up against scandals like Duke Cunningham taking money for legislation or government contracts, and they see that there are people who get tempted by money and power.
I think there is a lot of opportunity, given the gravity of the problems that our society is facing right now. The media, with the internet and the blogosphere, there's a lot of really good substance out there, and so there's really a lot of promise that our ideal realization of democracy can happen because of those resources and because people are more aware of and more concerned about the way the decision-making that takes place in our government.
It seems fundamental government reform is more possible now than ever. President Obama, you're the ideal candidate that can invoke this type of reform. Don't we need true representation from politicians that are open-minded and reasonable? Is this unrealistic? I'm Jonathan Majorana, and thank you for your time.